Hello, today we're going to look at how to make custom worksheets using Google Slides or PowerPoint. My name is Melissa Palmer and I am the presenter for this particular lesson. So please keep in mind LODA-USD's common norms. So make sure you're actively engaged, open to new ideas, opinions, and or rationales. Be hard on ideas, soft on people. Present your opinions using I statements. All right. Then please take a moment, if you would, at some point maybe, and celebrate Learning Strong Lodi 2020, 2021. And make sure you use the tag there if you had any posts or photos from this. All right, I did go ahead and create a Google Classroom for this lesson. Here is the classroom code. And what you will find in the Google Classroom is written out directions for PowerPoint and Google Slides. So everything I'm going to go over today in a written out form. A couple of pieces of free clip art and free borders. So if you want to go ahead and work along while I'm going through this, you are more than welcome to. That way you have access to the same material I'm using. So why choose one or the other? Why choose PowerPoint over Google Slides or Google Slides over PowerPoint? There's two defining features for each of them. For PowerPoint, the first defining feature is the fact that it actually lets you type equations directly in to your slides. Google Slides, however, does not have that feature, but it does have its auto-saving feature. So if you're a math teacher, PowerPoint is probably going to be more in line with what you'll want to use. Google Slides would work well for anyone else. Okay. So I'm going to go over how to resize your slides, how to add a text box, pictures, frames, put the full page border in the background or whatever image you may want to put in the background, how to save it as a PDF. For those of you doing distance learning, I'm going to show you how to save your PDF as a JPEG. And then I'll explain to you the benefits of going ahead and doing this. And then last but not least, how to stop people from copying from your PDF, which would mean they can highlight, Control-C, and then cut and paste directly from it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to go ahead and start in PowerPoint. And I'm going to show you today how to make this little worksheet here that I put together in PowerPoint. All right, so first things first, you need to go ahead and just open up a blank document in PowerPoint. We're not going to need any of the design ideas, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And now I just have my blank document in front of me. First thing I'm going to go ahead and do is go up here to the Home menu, and I'm going to go to Layout, and I'm going to go ahead and choose Blank. I want to make the slide completely blank because I'm going to go ahead and add in everything I want on it. Next, we want to change this slide so that it's the same size as a piece of paper. To do that, we go here to the Design menu, all the way over here to where it says Slide Size. And we're not going to use either of these. We want to go to Custom Size. And now in Width, I'm going to go ahead and type in 8.25. In the height, I'm going to type in 10.75. Now, the reason I'm choosing those two numbers is that allows for any margins that might be used by the printer. So it makes it slightly smaller than 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And since we only have one slide, we're just going to go ahead and have it number of slides as 1. Hit OK. Now, maximize or ensure to fit. In our case, because the slide is completely blank, it doesn't matter which one you pick. If by chance you had something on the slide you wanted to keep, then you're going to want to hit Ensure to Fit. That will make sure that whatever you had on the slide previously will fit onto this particular slide you're creating. Now, I like to put backgrounds on my slides. In particular, I like to use borders. And I like to do that because it allows me to really quick glance at a paper and say, okay, that was your classwork or a class assignment, and that was your homework. I can see the difference in the two. And I don't have to use colored paper or things like that. So to do that, first thing you're going to do is go to the design menu and click on Format Background. Then you're going to want to click on Picture or Texture Fill. Obviously, there are other options if you want, but those are not necessarily what we're going to use. And now Picture Source, I'm going to hit Insert, and I'm going to go look for where my picture is. And here is my picture that I want to use, which is my doodle border. And I'm going to go ahead and insert it. Now, by putting this picture as the background, what you won't have happen is when you're dragging things around on the slide and moving them where you want them, you won't have the issue of inadvertently grabbing your background. It's out of the way, it's back there, and you know it'll be there. Also, if you add in a new slide, so if I hit new slide, notice it's blank. Okay, well, I'm going to hit undo real quick. And what I have to do to make that not happen again is come right down here and see where it says apply to all. I have to hit apply to all. Now, when I ask it to give me a new slide, it will give me the slide with the background. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close Format Background. So that's the first two steps in this process. And now all we're going to do is start inserting things into our presentation. So everything else we're working with is going to be in the Insert menu here. So we're going to be inserting a table, pictures, shapes, text box, and equations today. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is grab a text box, and I'm going to insert it right here. So I do that by clicking and holding the left mouse button and dragging over to the right until I make a box about as big as I want. Now, before I get to typing, please keep in mind that right now, if you look down here, we're zoomed out at 51%. So this slide is a lot smaller looking than what it's actually going to look like as a piece of paper. So if you want to have a sense of what it's going to look like as a piece of paper, you're going to want to zoom in until you get to 100%. That will help you keep your fonts at a good size for what you're doing. For a title, 18 is not bad. So you can go right here to the home menu, and you can choose 18 or whatever size you want, and you can change the font to whatever size or type you want. For simplicity, I'm going to leave it alone. You can do what you choose with it. So now I'm going to go ahead and type in my title. Right? And I don't really like my title there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and highlight it, and I'm going to tell it that I want to center it. I'm going to click center. And now my title is centered on the page. I'm going to zoom back out now, clicking the little minus so I have a larger visual of what this is going to look like. And next up, we're going to go ahead and look at adding in these next couple of things right here, the goal and all of that. All right, so next up, we insert a lovely little goal. So again, we're going to go to the Insert menu. I'm just going to go ahead and use a text box for this, nothing too fancy. Again, I'm going to drag it across the screen. And since my title was 18, I'm going to actually shrink my goal down to 14 since it doesn't need to be as big a font. And I'm going to type my goal in. Now, notice I've got a text box here, and I can take my cursor and my pointer until it gives me that 4 arrowed pointer, and now I can drag this wherever I want. And notice as I'm dragging it around, unlike Microsoft Word or Google Docs, it doesn't bounce anything else around. So I can actually put these two things right on top of each other if I wanted to. I don't because you can't read them, but I can drag that wherever I want. So I'm going to drag that right there. And next up, we're going to add in, I'm going to go back to our insert here, and I'm going to add in a lovely little text box because I'm going to go ahead and type in the how do you do that? And we're going to shrink this down because it defaults to 18. And we're going to shrink it down to 12. And notice that looks pretty small. So again, if you're having trouble reading it, you can zoom in and out down here at the bottom. So how do you do that? All right. So if you remember on my original, or if you what, let's go look at my original. So on the original, I had a little speech bubble here and a little monster blob. Well, to add those in, I'm just going to go back to my insert menu, and the speech bubble just came right out of shapes here. And since I used it recently, it's up here, but under regular conditions, it's going to be down here under callouts. And I'm just going to choose this little guy right here. And now I'm going to left click and hold the mouse button, and I'm going to drag it across. And ooh, I got a couple of problems now. One, it's solid blue. And two, you can't see my text anymore. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the shape outline to black. And I'm going to take the shape fill and I'm going to say no fill. Now you can see my text, but here's the thing. My text is actually still behind this speech bubble. And if I want the text in front so I can drag it around, then what I'm going to do is click on the speech bubble. So I have the little box with the dots. And I'm going to come right here under the drawing tools, format, and I want to go here to send backwards. I'm going to click on send backwards. Now visually it doesn't look like anything's changed, but notice that I can now grab a hold of my text and it's not moving the speech bubble at all. And that's what I wanted. Now I'm going to leave my text where I want it, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the speech bubble, and I'm going to shrink it down just a little more and adjust it to fit my text. Now I need my little alien guy, or monster guy, or whatever you want to call him. Go to my pictures. In this case, I'm going from this device because that's where they are. And there's my first little guy. So I'm going to go ahead and insert him. Just a wee bit big, so let's go ahead and shrink that down by grabbing the corner of the picture and shrinking it down. And now I have my lovely little guy. All right, so that looks like I've taken care of a lot of it. Almost. All right, let's go back here to my document. And I'm going to insert another text box. And the reason I'm inserting this text box now is so I can add in some information underneath here. Made it way bigger than it needs to be, which is not a big deal. You can always adjust them later. So ooh, lovely typo. Let's get that fixed. And I'm going to drag this box over here so it stretches out. And again, I don't... Ugh, sorry about that. Undo. I don't want this to be this big, so I'm going to go up as soon as I can get this to let me highlight. There we go. And I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to shrink this actually down to size 14. So it's still a little bigger than your average font, but not totally. Then I'm going to go in, and on my original, I had a couple of blank spaces. So what I'm going to actually do is just take the words I typed in and delete them and replace them with lines. So now I have what could be a fill in the blank area. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I know I have two words, so this time I'm going to put some lines, space it out a little, and put a few more lines. So now you have a fill in the blank area for students. So I'm going to go ahead and also insert another shape, and I'm just going to choose the rectangle, just a basic rectangle, and I'm going to put it right here. And I like to use these as giving students a set area to write in. And again, all I'm going to do is change the shape fill under the drawing tools to none and the shape outline to black. And I'm keeping this black and white just so that the printer and photocopiers at work will be able to print this without a problem. If I printed it in color, it would just print it with the grayscales. So now I have all of that, and you could keep going and add in the other parts, but I'm going to go ahead and show you at this point how to add in the table and how to insert the equations. So I'm going to go back up here to the top and hit Insert. I'm going to go to Table, and I had a 4x2 table in there, which I know you couldn't see that clearly. So I'm going to drag this down here toward the bottom of the page just to get it out of the way. And notice again, as I drag it around, it's not doing anything to any of the rest of my slides. So I stretched it out. I'm not really fond of this blue, and it's not going to print very well. So under the table tools, which you get by making sure you clicked on the table, so you have the little dots around the outside, you want to click on Design, and then we're going to open up all of these fun little designs. We're going to actually use this one right here that says No Style, Table Grid, and that means there's no colors, it's just the black lines with no fill. And now, inside each of these boxes, or at least the first 4, I'm going to go ahead and fill in equations. To do that, I go back to my Insert, and I go ahead and hit this Equation button. Now I get a whole bunch of stuff up here. For the first couple of equations, there's nothing too major going on, so I'm just going to type in things like x plus 29 equals 5. Okay. Next one, do the same thing, went over to the next box, insert equations, x minus 16 equals 6. Okay. And notice that each of these equations is now inside the correct box, or its corresponding box. Now the last one that might be tricky if you've never done this before is the one with if you wanted to enter a fraction. So you go ahead and hit Insert, and you go over to Equations again, and this time we want to use this little button right here that says Add a Fraction to the Equation. And I'm going to click the little arrow that's underneath it. It gives me a bunch of different designs. For what we're doing, I'm going to go ahead and click on the stacked fraction. And then I'm going to fill in my numerator. And then all I have to do is use my arrow keys, making sure I still have that light gray, because that still means I'm inside the equation. And I've now typed in my division equation. Now let's say you wanted the table there because you wanted your stuff to be nice and neat and organized, but you don't necessarily want it on the students' papers. Well, what you can do is click back inside the table and go to Design. Just like before, click on the arrow to open this up, and you can choose to go with the No Style, No Grid. Now, when the students see it, there won't be any lines. It's up to you what your preference is or what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and leave this with the grid lines, though. That is the basics of setting up your own worksheet, and you can make them as fancy and complicated as you want, or as simple as you want. Now, if I wanted to save this as a PDF, because PDFs are a lot easier for students to open on cell phones, tablets, things like that, and Aries is actually set up where you can upload files into your gradebook directly. So every time I had an assignment last year, I would upload a digital copy as a PDF so that students had access to it that way. That way they weren't coming to me going, I need another copy. Well, there's a digital copy. So to make this turn into a PDF, here's what you can do. Go here to the File menu, and then you can come down to Save As. Choose where you want to save it, and then instead of saving it as a PowerPoint presentation, you're going to open that up and you're going to choose to save it as a PDF. Now that means it'll say Presentation 3 PDF. Go ahead and save it. And there is my PDF file. And notice my background is there, everything is there, nothing can be moved or anything like that. Also, depending on your PDF software, at this point in your PDF software, so this is mine, Foxit Phantom PDF, you can actually go in many of them you can protect it. So you can go in and password protect it. And what that'll let you do is stop somebody from being able to highlight things and copy and paste out of your PDF. That's how you do that, but you have to have a separate program for that. Now, there actually is a second way you could save it as a PDF, and to do that, you go back to File and come down here to Print. And then, where it says Printer, instead of having your regular old printer that you would have, you tell it Microsoft Print to PDF. And what will happen is it will pop up with the little save box. You can type in the name, and then you have PDF right there. Especially if you feel like you might pick the wrong thing from the drop-down menu, this is a quick way to guarantee it's there. Now, last but not least, I was saying that you can save this as a JPEG. And in order to do that, you go back to your file, click on Save As. Again, choose where you'd like to click to save it. And then instead of picking PowerPoint, we're actually going to come right here and we're going to pick JPEG File Interchange Format. And then we'll hit Save, and that would give us a JPEG. Now, which slides do you want to export? You can export just one or all slides. If you export all the slides, what's going to happen is PowerPoint will make a folder that has the same title as your presentation, and then each slide in your presentation will be an individual picture in there. We only have one slide, so I'm going to tell it just one. That's all there is to it. And if I go and take a look in that folder, which said presentation, let me minimize those. And there it is. You can see earlier I saved this as a one-step equations, and here's the folder with the JPEG inside it. And we'll talk about why the JPEGs are nice to have access to in a few minutes. All right, so that covers PowerPoint. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what happens if you're working in Google Slides. Most of this is exactly the same. You're going to open up a new document. We don't need the themes. We're going to close that down. And we're going to go through and do the same basic things here in Google Slides. Some of the stuff is just in a slightly different place. So if I want to go in and change the size of my slide, I go to File. Then I go all the way down here to Page Setup. And now it says widescreen. I don't want widescreen, so I'm going to come here to Custom. And I'm going to tell it the width needs to be 8.25 and the height needs to be 10.75. Again, for the same reason, to allow for the borders on or margins on any printers. And click Apply. Now that looks kind of funky, so I do change my layout. So to do that, I come up here to the slide menu. And then I go Apply Layout, and I'm looking for the one that says Completely Blank. Now I have a lovely blank slide, and I can go ahead and start adding things in. If you want to zoom in or out, there is the lovely little zoom, which is right here. It looks like a magnifying glass. If you want to zoom in, it has a plus. If you want to zoom out, you just need to click on the arrow and change it to zoom out. For the sake of our brain cells, I'm going to zoom in to 100% and go up here to the top. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to change the backgrounds. To do that, I go to Slide, go to Change Background, and I'm not going to do anything to color. I'm just going to say Choose an Image, and I uploaded some images earlier, so let me locate them. Here we go. Go ahead and Insert. Done. There you go. You now have a background on your slide. So now we're just going in and inserting the rest. So we're looking at the insert menu here. To insert an image, you click on image. You can upload from the computer, search the web, the drive. I actually have my images already in my Google Drive. And I'm going to grab my little alien guy, monster, whatever you want to call him, and insert him again. And whoop, nice going. Let's get that back. And let's go ahead and shrink this little guy down to a more reasonable size. So we're just grabbing the corners and dragging just like before. And all shrunk down. And from here, let's go look for some shapes. Now they're broken up a little different in here. So we're in the insert menu and then shapes. And now we have the different shapes, the arrows, the callouts, and some symbols for equations, just like the other. So for callouts, I'm going to choose whatever one I feel like. I'm just going to choose that one, drag it right here, and I now have my little callout here. All there is to it. And if I want to type inside it, this is where this is a little bit easier. I can just double click inside it and type in. And then I can choose, okay, I don't really want it that big, so I come up here, drop it down to 12, change my formats and my file fonts however I want. And it's actually all one unit here in Google. You can still add a text box in on top if you want. You would just go insert and a text box right here and put the text box on top. The shapes, however, you can just double click and type in them. So if I wanted to put a text box in, so I'm just going to type in something here. Let's see, solving single step equations. That was my title from before. I'm going to keep using it. So highlight everything. And I'm going to increase the font size, make it bold, and maybe change the font. Okay. Now, in the sample one, I had a lovely pencil behind this. Well, I don't have the pencil here. So let's go ahead and insert image. And I'm going to go back to Drive because I already uploaded them. And I'm going to go find the pencil. There's the pencil. Tell it to insert. And yep, we got the pencil. It's kind of facing the wrong direction. So to turn it, I'm going to click on this little blue dot right here. And I'm going to hold my left mouse button down. And I'm going to drag my mouse around until the pencil is now horizontal instead of vertical. But oh me, oh my, it's still kind of big. So we're going to shrink it down. Move it over here above my title, and ooh, I have a problem. It's in the front. So what can I do? I go here and I can actually just right click, go to order, and just tell it, send it backwards. Drag it over, and now I have access to everything, and we're going to move that over, and looky, now we have a lovely title inside a pencil. All there is to this. Now, in Google Slides, to save as a PowerPoint, you go to File, PowerPoint, PDF, however you want to look at it. We go to File, and you can actually go to Download, and then hit Download PDF document. And what will happen is it'll go through and download a PDF for you. You can see that right here. And when I open it up, I now have a PDF. If I want to put it back in my Google Drive, obviously I'm going to need to upload it from the Downloads folder. You also can go in and do the same thing that I did in the other one and go down here to Print, and then change destination to save as PDF, and it'll do the same thing. Last but not least, if you want to make this into a JPEG, you just go File, Download, and tell it you'd like a JPEG of it, and it will do the same thing. It'll create a JPEG in your Downloads folder. Now, I've mentioned this several times. Why have I been mentioning a JPEG? And that JPEGs might be worth having. I'm going to show you now. So I've got my slide here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the layout because it went with the default that had the titles. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to show you why the JPEGs might be a good thing for those of you doing distance learning. So just like before, I'm going to put the background in. So I'm going to go to slide. I'm going to hit change background and I'm going to tell it choose an image. And I uploaded this little guy earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and insert it, tell it done. And now I have a JPEG, which means this is my background for this particular slide. What I can do now is I can go in and insert a text box or a shape. I'm going to go ahead and go with shapes. I'm going to pick a rectangle and I'm going to insert a rectangle here. And now I have a rectangle, and what I can do is keep that there for just a minute, and I can go in and insert a couple more rectangles. So put one here, and I can put one in the other plank, or I can go Control C and Control V and copy it so I don't have to sit there and keep going to all the menus. And now what this is going to allow me to do is take this Google slide and I can put it as an assignment in my Google Classroom. And then my students, instead of me having to print this out for them, they could actually go right here and type in an answer. So how do you solve one-step equations? You need to isolate the variable using inverse operations. There you go. Now, you also could do things like you could insert pictures that have, like down here where it says solve the four equations, you could insert pictures that say like x equals 10 and multiple answers for the other ones, and then they could drag the correct answers underneath each equation. Or you could insert more pictures where they had to put which operations were the inverse of which, so they could put a picture in here instead of typing. If you don't want to go through and do all that, you actually could leave it up to your students. You would just have to tell them that they need to go ahead and use insert and either insert a shape or a text box, and then they'd have to put it in the place where they want to type. So if they want to put a text box in here, they can, and then they can go in and type in the answers. So this is nice for people who are doing distance learning because then each student has their own little slide. They can't inadvertently delete your equations or your pictures or anything else that you may want them to actually have. The worst they can do is delete the shapes of the text box that you're putting there for them to go ahead and type their answers into. So this is how you make your own worksheets using Google Slides or PowerPoint. There's tons of free clip art out there. There's tons of clip art you can pay for, but there's a lot of free clip art. So feel free, give it a try, play around. Let's see what you can do with your own materials. And if you would, before you take off on this, please go ahead and, yep, forgot to place the name of the session there. Take a minute and fill out the lovely evaluation on this particular presentation. Yep, I'm good. So there's the link to the evaluation. Please go ahead and take a minute and fill that out. Thank you.